right, well, welcome to Idea Box. I am sitting down with Emily Dugan, our Executive Artistic Director, and we're going to do a little bit of interview. Who are we? Why are we? What do we want? Why are we wanting it?
So I've been told.
All right. So let's introduce yourself. How do you like people to perceive you? What's your name, rank, salary,
How do I like to be? I'm Emily Dugan. I go by Miss Emily usually in the classroom, or just Emily. I have been a teaching artist for a very long time. Since I was a teenager myself, I started like assistant directing the middle school plays. She, her pronouns, I should probably say that.
Sure.
Emily Dugan, she, her pronouns. And mostly what I try to do, mostly what my career goal has been, is to build community through art making. So it was kind of funny when this is still like 15 years ago, I was wrapping up work with, or not wrapping, I was like wrapping up the year's work with a school I'd been with for about 15 years. And yet here I am, still 29. And the parent volunteer, she was wrapping up her last year with the program. She'd had 2 kids go through the program, and she had been the one who interviewed and hired me. And at that point, she's like, here's some notes I took from Emily's interview, one of which was that I had blue hair. So they decided to hire me regardless. But the other was what I expressed to them, that I thought theater was both a function of community and a way to create community. And then for a long time, I had a struggle about figuring out what kind of artist I was. Like, am I a performer? Am I a director? Am I a designer? And then I learned about a thing called interdisciplinary, which I should have known long before that point in my life. But it was really exciting to just have that aha moment of like, oh, there's a name for what I do. It's all the things. It's called interdisciplinary. And as somebody who comes from a musical theater background primarily, that's, to me, kind of the quintessential interdisciplinary art form, because you can't have any piece of a musical without the other pieces, the visual design, even if it's simple visual design, the music, the movement, and the acting work. Like, all of those pieces have to come together nicely. And I think a lot of people don't realize some things are musicals that are musicals,
Yes.
Some things they watch that incorporate all those elements. So then, I got more into other types of interdisciplinary work, immersive theater. I've always been a fan of puppetry. And as I've gone, I've accumulated a lot of really great people who are good at teaching these things and know how to make all kinds of stuff I don't know how to make. So Idea Box kind of coalesced out of that.
Well, let's start with some definitions then. What is art? Simple question.
Art can be anything, don't you know?
It's true, but what do you think art is?
I think art has intention. That's what sometimes I've had this conversation, with various groups of different ages and stuff. And I think, true, anything can be art. But there has to be some degree of intention of the presentation, of asking your audience to look at it as art. So even if you look at, like, Duchamp's fountain, it's just a found existing object, he had to contextualize it as art for it to be art. It didn't just become art lying there. There was a lens that he added for people to look at it. I do think there are a lot of things that are overlooked as arts. We do a lot of niche arts like balloon twisting and face painting, and not just magic, but like applied magic, in the sense of like, oh, we can use this as a special effect. We can use this to enhance the story that we're already telling. So, what was my point?
What is art?
What is art? Magic. Art is magic.
No, intention.
I got there at the end. No. I think intention is really important. And then I think that some degree of expression of the artist's point of view would be important, which could be, I want to color this page because it relaxes me.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I will say, I don't think art needs an audience.
Okay.
It's great if it has an audience, if the artist wants it to have an audience.
Outside themselves.
Yes,
the artist can be their own audience.
Okay, that's an excellent point. The artist can be their own audience, an external audience to the artist. But it's funny because, as a performing artist, like, it's very difficult for me to conceive of somebody making art and not wanting to share it with the world. But then other people need to look at it and tell you it's cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you hear about process versus product, I personally believe good process creates good product, but I also believe there's value in process with no product. And just process and mush it all back into a ball and start over and just enjoy making the thing.
Yep, the ethereal nature of some art is just as important.
So for us here, yes, generally there is an audience, but I don't think that's as important as intention and some degree of expression.
What does interdisciplinary mean?
It's when you can't make your art without at least two forms intersecting. It just can't be done without the combination of those two things. Because there's also multidisciplinary, which would be like, we can sing and then we can dance. But if you're singing and dancing, now you're doing something interdisciplinary. And it's often, especially in the work we do, it often doesn't fit a category. Like if you take something like puppetry, is that theater? Is that craft? Is it acting? It's so many potential things, but it's just puppetry. And so we can let it be that and put it in the bucket of interdisciplinary.
Great. What is a teaching artist?
Teaching artist is a professional working artist, somebody who puts their work out for an audience, usually for a paying audience, but not always. And then also, especially in the case of the teaching artists who work here, they feel that teaching is part of their artistic practice, that it's not enough to just make work, that you also have to make sure the next generation of artists also knows what they need to know in order to make their own work.
What does idea box mean? What is that? Those two words together, what does that mean?
Well, I like ideas. Actually, okay, so good question. Because the brand name Idea Box kind of just popped into my head as I was like, what shall I name it? And my brain was like, how about Idea Box? And I was like, sure. I liked the way it sounded. And then, this is a little bit of a sidebar before I tell you what it means. I needed a logo for Idea Box, and we didn't have a budget for that. But I searched online, and I found this logo on a designer's page as just a conceptual design. He had made it as to just show what he could do, and I messaged and I was like, is somebody actually using this? Like, is there a company out there called Idea Box? The Integrated Arts wasn't on it. And he was like, no, this was just like a little sample I did, and it was already in the colors that kind of tend to be our branding colors. The exclamation point was already in there. So he did sell it to me. I did not get it for free, but for a very reasonable nonprofit price, and it's been the foundation of our branding. But if I had to reverse engineer, like, what caused my brain to suggest this name, I think two things are really important in art. I think the artist having freedom to make their own choices is super important, but I also think having a structure to work within is really valuable and helpful. Even if the artist decides, like, oh, I'm going to eschew this structure, I don't need to follow the rules, it still gives them a rule to break.
Right.
So a lot of the things I do, like short form improv, that's a great example of having a structure, and then within that the artist can play around and create whatever they want. Or building puppets, where we can say, here's a base pattern, here's the foundation to make sure it will work, and all of its limbs won't fall off, and it can convey emotion, and then they can go in and create the details of who that puppet is as a character, personality, etc. So yeah, the box is definitely that. I did get a little worried, like, oh no, because we're supposed to think outside the box, and now we're a box. But fortunately, there's exclamation points exploding out of it. So I feel like that helps communicate.
It's more in the Pandora's box.
Yes, this is a box we are providing you with, full of tools to make your own explosion of art.
Yes.
That's what the logo means, and I definitely meant that from the beginning.
Completely. What is an artist?
An artist, I think, is someone who wants to make art and then sits down and does so. So that might be a little bit of gatekeeping there, because they have to actually go and make the art. But I will say what art making can look like can be very different depending on who somebody is. That could mean writing a poem and saying it out loud with your words. Doesn't necessarily have to mean you put your hands on an object. But I say that because I've heard this this like kind of recurring theme from artists where somebody, oh, I've written a novel. Oh, you have? All up here. And it's like, well, then you know what it's like to imagine a novel.
You conceptualize a novel.
Yeah, and that is what we artists call the first step.
Right.
But then all the steps after that are what keep everybody from writing novels, right? The boring parts, the editing parts, the parts
having to read your own words on a page, be like, oh God, I'm terrible.
Having to let somebody else read your words and have them go, oh God, you're terrible. Or tell you it's good and then be like, but I didn't think it was good. Why did they think it was good? So like, there's a lot of emotional risk. There's a lot of literal, physical labor that goes into writing a novel. So the imagination piece is great and it's important, but it's the action piece, I think, that actually makes somebody an artist and not just a lovely imaginative person.
Correct. I agree. What is craft?
Oh, craft is, glad you asked. I came to this definition all by myself before realizing the world figured it out thousands and thousands of years ago. Craft is making an object with artistic intent that serves some kind of functional purpose. When you're done with it, you can use it, whether you've woven a basket, as is the classic craft, or sewn yourself an outfit, or even just made one of those hooky things you used to pull out of the oven. I had to make that in wood shop. Right? That's all. But it became art when I burned that little flower into the handle right there, right? So it's frustrating as an adult because arts and crafts tends to be like arts and crafts, the realm of the summer camp counselor. But there's a reason it's there, because when you're at summer camp, hopefully you're making something useful, especially, the classical in the woods summer camp, right? Hopefully it's arts and crafts, because you're not just coloring, you're possibly making a thing you can put things in to carry them around in the woods. And I feel like culturally we're headed back in the direction of craft. I think people are sick of mass-produced things. I think people are sick of waste.
I think of the waste as the big changing point.
And just seeing that, despite the fact that there is a lot of horrible fast fashion in our thrift stores now, it's fabric. It's stuff that we can take and remake and make into new things and keep because a lot of it's plastic. We can just keep making it into new things forever and ever, to the point where a lot of people I know don't buy new clothes anymore unless it's a really specific thing they can only find in that particular place. But also just, wanting to be able to do things like garden in your backyard and whip together your own gardening aprons so that you don't have to waste time finding something that's the perfect fit for the exact tools that you want to have carried around in front of you.
Last one, because I think you have a very interesting take on this. What does accessibility mean to you?
What does accessibility mean to me? Well, first of all, this is a topic I am always trying to learn about because I have a lot of privilege myself in not needing a lot of accessibility aids. So when I think about accessibility, I try to think about what that unique, what is unique to that disability that we could just kind of toss out as an element of the project. So for example, if it's a dance project and all of my students are chair-bound or wheelchair-bound, then we're just making a dance that doesn't require getting out of chairs, and that's still going to be an outstanding dance because all the principles that we apply as choreographers, they're not limited by not using the lower half of our bodies. Or I think this might be what you're referring to. If I'm designing work for the blind, then we don't actually have to worry at all about what the work looks like, because now, there may be elements where a blind person is like, yes, I actually would like someone to describe the artwork to me, and I do want that in there, but I'm interested in exploring what it's like if we make art with no visual element whatsoever. If we bring in blind artists to say, well, if I brought sighted people into this room and wanted them to experience what I experience as a blind person when I'm experiencing joy, right? What are the smells, sounds? What does the room feel like around me? What are the tastes of joy? I think I told you one of my favorite non-sighted experiences is a restaurant that's entirely pitch black, and that's very much about taste. It gets very loud. But yeah, like how can we go from the standpoint of the artist's abilities or the abilities that define the project, and then reach out from there.
I would also say I find interesting your approach in different social circumstances to advance accessibility, given some of our schools, the culture of that school makes arts less accessible, or the way we have practiced arts previously would be a barrier to entry for those students. I've always found that interesting how you go past that and see it like a project that would take one school environment 10 minutes to do, some could be 2 classes.
This is so true. This is so true. So I mean, it's almost a matter of, well, it is specifically a matter of practicality. Over the years, you write a curriculum, you go into school, you do that curriculum, it goes well, you go into the next school, and day one things crash and burn, and you have a choice as a teaching artist. You can continue to try to shove that square peg into that round hole and get angry that the students aren't doing what you need for the curriculum, but then everybody has a terrible time, including the teacher, or you can go home with that curriculum and identify what you know the students will get excited about, be able to accomplish quickly so that they can see they can be successful, and then like, what are the stretch goals? Maybe by class 3, everybody's so engaged that suddenly we're back on track with the original curriculum. Maybe not. And then I think maybe the other piece is creating work and creating work and creating work, and then giving students permission to not share work they don't like. Rather than focusing on making a good project, we focus on letting them make lots of projects and then narrow it down to what they think is their absolute best work. And that's what we put on stage or in front of an audience, may not be presentational. And the other really fun thing about that is it makes for short, pleasant shows. I mean, we don't watch students ever struggle through something they feel uncomfortable with. We don't ever watch students.
We don't put a block up for the audience where they have to struggle with something that the artists are struggling with.
Right. And that's so painful, especially when you're there watching a friend or a child who is a student in the class. So, but also that's what we do as professional artists. We don't put unprepared work in front of people. We don't force ourselves to finish a project that's not going well. Well,
sometimes we do.
Sometimes we do.
Sometimes deadlines are deadlines.
Sometimes paychecks are paychecks.
Yep.
But for the most part, if we're making work for ourselves as professional artists, sometimes halfway through it turns into a different project. So we have built into our curriculum that students can reach a certain point. I mean, it's really the halfway point for us, where we say, okay, everybody, like, how are we doing? Do we like our projects? Do we need to make big changes? Sometimes just knowing you can make a change is all you need. Like, it's not so much that I don't like my project and want to change it. I just need to know that if the next thing I do ruins my project, then I can change it. And it, like, takes away some of the fear of taking the next step in the project or doing the thing, making the cut. Cutting the fabric, oh, so scary.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also like you think of the Bob Ross model where there are no mistakes, they're just happy accidents. Some people that works really well. Some people can't conquer that happy accident and have to start over.
Yeah.
Like that's a personal
that's a good point.
Where you are as a person. Sometimes the barrier is you're not there to accept that stroke as a flower or a tree or a bird. Sometimes you're like, no, that all has to go. I can't work around that. And sometimes we leave kids room to be like, no, this is the part of the process I would like not to share. And I think all of those it create a really comprehensive concept of accessibility in what you have Idea Box do out in the world.
This reminds me of, we've had students who are nonverbal or selectively verbal, and I was talking to a student in one of my most recent classes, and she has not been participating in dance because of joint pain, but the general sentiment among school staff is that perhaps the joint pain is an excuse, that is not as bad as it is, or that she could be working on or taking care of, so fine. So that to me reads, she is having more than one obstacle to participating in my class, not just joint pain, whether or not the joint pain is real. So that, what I talked to her about is one of my other students who was first grade, nonverbal with adults, but would talk to his group mates. So he would create work with his group mates, and then he would stand backstage, and they would perform his work. And for him, I think the standing backstage piece was important, that he not just sit there and watch, because then it would be their work, but if he went there and he was in the wings, like sending his energy to them or supporting them from that angle, that felt to him like his performance. As much as I could understand with him being nonverbal, but watching his posture, watching his facial expressions, watching the way he interacted with his peers before and after the performance, I'm pretty confident that he got a lot out of being in that backstage space. So talking to the girl in my class now, saying like, you don't have to put your own body on stage to put your ideas on stage in a body. Yeah. There's other bodies out there that you can borrow if you want to. Mm-hmm. And this particular school is a very collaborative school, so that's not even really a new concept to their students of like dividing labor to whoever it's most fit for, but sometimes we forget we can do that with our creative ideas.
That everybody doesn't have to be perfect at every skill
right.
that goes into that art.
Well, it's when you start dance, I started dance late in life, and it's a little surprising to find out that a lot of the choreographers, like the people who are making really mind-blowing movements in what's happening in dance choreography, are old and joints are broken, and they were dancers when they were young, and they no longer look or move like dancers. So they've moved to the point where they can take everything they understood from their young body and translate it to information that they give to the bodies that can still do those things. Mm-hmm. And like, there's no reason that should be restricted to old dancers.
And so we do a lot of school-based work here and a lot of children's work, but we do adult work. What would you say is the difference for you as a teaching artist? Are there different approaches or different ideas that go into classes for adults or workshops for adults or performances for adults than what you do when you're in a school residency?
That's a great question. School residency, there is some degree of required participation. Even if it's, to whatever degree we can accommodate their needs, it's still, they're hopefully going to be in some way participating in the project. And that is not necessarily their choice. That's right. The difference, right?
They don't get full consent.
Right. The adults who are even when a kid signs up for class, sometimes mom just signed you up. Like we always ask that the first day, why are you taking the class? And it's okay to tell us if mom just signed you up. Yeah. Because many great artists have started with mom or dad or whatever parent just signed them up. Mm-hmm. Grandma, uncle just signed them up for something they didn't understand. But with adults, theoretically, they have elected to be present themselves, and they have therefore their own idea coming into the class of what they want to get out of it to a much greater degree than students do. Students are more like, hey, you tell us what we're about to get out of this class, and adults come in with their own preconceived notion, which can be beneficial and can be harmful, depending on what you're trying to teach and how you're trying to teach it.
For more information about Idea Box, click the links below.